All right, March the 22nd through the 26th, we're going to be looking at lesson 23, adding and subtracting expressions with radicals. The last lesson we learned the different properties of using radicals. So now we're going to use those properties and put them to use. So exercises 1 through 5 are kind of some review. Simplify its expression as much as possible. Square root of 32, guys, think about 32. I can rewrite the square root of 32 as the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. The square root of 16 is 4. And I cannot simplify the square root of 2 anymore, so 4 square root of 2. Alright, let me adjust this for just a second. Alright, let's look at the next one, number 2. Square root of 45, I can rewrite that as the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. The square root of 9 is 3. I cannot simplify the square root of 5 anymore, so 3 square root of 5. And then let's look at the square root of 300. I can rewrite that as the square root of 100 times the square root of 3. Square root of 100 is 10. I cannot simplify the square root of 3, so it's 10 square root of 3. The triangle shown below has a perimeter of 6.5 square root of 2 units. Make a conjecture about how this answer was reached. Well, if you look at the sides of the triangle, all right, how do I find the perimeter of a triangle? Well, I add all the sides together. They got 6.5 square root of 2. If you will look at that, 3, 4, 5 plus 1.5 is 6.5. It appears that they only added the numbers in front of the radical. All right? So they added 2 plus 3 plus 1.5, which gave them 6. All right, the square root of 2 shown as part of the length just remained the square root of 2. All right. Number 5. The sides of the triangle are 4 square root of 3, square root of 12, and the square root of 75. Make a conjecture about how to determine the perimeter of this triangle. I would suggest that you do everything you can to try to rewrite. Hopefully you will see that the square root of 12 and that the square root of 75 can be rewritten. All right? And let's look and see what happens. So 4 square root of 3 cannot be rewritten. But let's look at the square root of 12. I can rewrite the square root of 12 as the square root of 4 times 3. The square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 3 I can't do anything with. Let's look at the square root of 75. The square root of 75 can be written as the square root of 25 times 3. So the square root of 25 is 5, and I can't do the square root of 3. Now look at what happens to all of my answers. I have 4 square root of 3, 2 square root of 3, and 5 square root of 3. So now what I can do is I can add these answers. So 4 plus 2 is 6, plus 5 is 11, square root of 3. Okay? So there you go. All right. So the big thing is you've got to make sure that you correctly simplify your square roots. All right? You have to make sure that you correctly simplify your square roots. Alright, let's look at number 6. Circle the expressions that can be simplified using the distributive property. Be prepared to explain your choices. Alright, so let's look at this. How can I simplify using distributive property? Thinking about distributive property,